What if I told you that you could explain 2,000 years of history, philosophy, and belief in just 13 words? Well, today we're going to dive into an incredible masterclass in communication that does exactly that. So let's start with a problem. How do you explain a massive, super complex idea to an audience that might be skeptical or just plain uninterested? I mean, this is a huge challenge, right? Not just for religion, but for anyone trying to communicate a big idea in our noisy, distracted world. And this problem gets really, really real in a modern university classroom. This is kind of the front line for engaging with what some folks call the post-Christian era, where all the old assumptions just don't fly anymore. So our story is set in a very real place, a university course on Christianity. Now, I want you to imagine you're the professor, a guy named Pablo Blanco-Sarto. You're standing in front of a room full of students who are maybe bored, maybe a little hostile, or maybe just there for an easy credit. How in the world do you break through all that? And you can just feel the weight of that challenge in the professor's own words. He wrote, "How could I surprise or interest them? How could I help them understand? This is the question that has occupied me for years." For him, this wasn't just some academic puzzle. It was a deep personal quest. So, faced with this challenge, Professor Blanco-Sarto didn't just, tweak his syllabus. No, he came up with a whole new framework. He realized he didn't need more information. He needed a provocative, totally different way to frame it just to get his students to even look up from their phones. And here it is. Here's the hook. His solution was to try something that sounds, well, pretty much impossible. He decided to summarize the entire Christian faith, the creed, the sacraments, the whole shebang, in just a handful of words. But how many words would it take? Well, he landed on a very specific, very deliberate number, 13. And right away, that number should feel a little off. I mean, why 13? In a faith that's packed with symbolic numbers, why not choose something a little more, perfect? Well, turns out that's exactly the point. Think about it. In Christian symbolism, you expect to see numbers like 3 for the Trinity, 7 for perfection, or 12 for the apostles. 13, though, that's the outlier. It's the number for bad luck, for betrayal. It immediately makes you stop and go, wait, why that number? And that is the key. The number 13 wasn't picked for some deep theological meaning. It was chosen as a communication strategy. It's a pattern interrupt. It's designed to jolt the students awake and grab their attention from the very first minute. But the real genius here isn't just the number. That's just the hook to get you in the door. The real magic is what the professor does with it. See, this isn't about memorizing a list. It's about uncovering a story. So at this point, the question is totally obvious, right? Okay, you got me. I'm listening. So what are the 13 words? But here's the twist, and I love this part. The secret isn't actually in the words. In fact, if you read the professor's paper, he never even lists them, because the real lesson isn't about what the words are, it's about how they're explained. He uses a method called the history of salvation. Okay, so what does that even mean? Well, instead of just giving you a dictionary definition for a word, he treats each word like it's a chapter in a giant book. He traces it back in time, showing how the idea developed and grew inside this much larger historical story. So the framework is this really simple but powerful 3-step loop. First, you introduce one core concept, just one of those 13 words. Next, you unpack its history. You don't just define it, you show where it came from, how it evolved. And then, here's the crucial part. You connect it back to the big overarching story. You show how this one puzzle piece fits. You do this 13 times, and each word just builds on the last, creating one single coherent narrative. And this is where we kind of zoom out to the big takeaway. Because this whole approach, it's way more than a clever teaching trick for a theology class. It's a really powerful, universal lesson in communication. It's all about the power of a frame. So what this professor's method really gives us is a clear blueprint. It all starts with that provocative hook, in his case, the number 13. But then it goes deeper. He frames a super complex topic as one single, compelling story. He doesn't list facts, he builds a narrative. He guides his audience step by step, turning all that complexity into a journey that suddenly people actually want to go on. When you boil it all down, it's just this simple, powerful reminder that the best way to explain something complex, the best way to help someone really understand, and yeah, the best way to teach is almost always to tell a great story. And that leaves us with a final question to chew on. If you had to explain your passion, your job, or any complex topic you really care about, what would you choose to distill into just 13 words?